Hello. Since the equinox, and the equinox has very much connected with astronomy and with time. I want to have a look at a place. I've covered it before, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. And that's the township of Marulan to the south of Sydney. It's a small town, easy to miss. You might not think there's much there. The original township used to be a few kilometres south. All that's really left of it is this old cistern from the Freemasons Arms Hotel that used to be there. But now the township was moved to meet the railway. Well, that's the official excuse. I think there's something more to that, and we'll have a look a little bit further. But it's a good friend of mine lives there. It's a small little town. A pub, a few shops, train station, some old buildings. Again, nice, quaint little place, easy to miss. The highway now runs. It's bypassed now, so you have to go off the main road to get there. One of the older hotel. Interesting, especially because they still grow a campus there. Wink, wink, hint, hint, and. Again, it's a nice little town. As with so many Australian towns, it has a war memorial, and not unusual that this is an obelisk with four semi-finished stones around the outside. Again, another standard. The cafe, the coffee shop there, the Meridian Hotel. It's important that it's the Meridian Hotel because Marulan is directly on the Meridian. Across the road from the Meridian Cafe, you have the Marulan Town Clock. At the time, that was the largest stone moved by road in the southern hemisphere, and it's important that they would have a town clock there because Marulan is on the 150th meridian, and Australian Eastern Time is set on the 150th meridian. So there's a little map where you see the main features, but down the bottom we see the sundial and the Marulan marker. There's Meridian Park. You can see the arch. That's the Marulan marker, or the Centennial Archway, and that's very important, and again very easily missed. But why is it important? Because it's the equinox, and that marker and the town itself, but especially that marker, is exactly on 150th meridian, but it's also exactly 34.7 degrees south, which means that on the equinox the day and the length are of exactly equal time. So time is very important to this town. Literally time is defined from it, and the equinox is there. Now even there's a sundial there. Grow old with me, the best is yet to be, and you see the old man holding the scythe. Well, that's Kronos, Father Time, otherwise known as Saturn, and that's a very important link, and you can see the archway in the back there. So just as an idea, so it's 150 degrees from the Greenwich meridian, or another 30 degrees to the 180th. So again, there's some really cool stuff about this small town, and you see how the main road now passes around rather than passes through, and so many people would miss it. So there's a closer up of the Meridian Park where the marker is and the sundial in relation to one another. My mate Jono's house is just off that screen. And so at the very exact centre point of this marker, or the archway, exactly 150 degrees and 34.7 degrees south of the equator. So as you move around, again, people who, even the locals are pretty unaware of exactly what it means, but, well, we have that very much like the moon. Here we have a reference to the sun, and there we have the moon reference, the crescent, and in the centre of it there's like a sphere there. It revolves, and that sphere is divided into 12 sections, so 30 degrees, as Marulan is 30 degrees from the 180th, dividing the world into groups of 12. So there's another view. So sections of each one of those is 30 degrees, and that is an Earth connection. And this is the sun, and we also had the moon connection. It's about sun, earth and moon, and about time, and of course the equinox being important in regards to earth and sun. So, but anyway, on the equinox, sunrise at Marulan is exactly at 6 a.m. At sunset on the equinox, it's exactly at 6 p.m. So the day is defined exactly into two sections of 12 hours, or 43,200 seconds for day, 43,200 seconds for night. There's another, just to illustrate it, so we have the sun, the earth, and the moon. That's what they're pointing at. Remember, it's a short distance from Goulburn. Goulburn's a very Masonic town. The surveyors who built the road through Marulan, the Marulan Pass, were Masons. Governor Lachlan Macquarie, who ordered the road to be built through the Marulan Pass, was a Mason. But anyway, so now let's look closer at these maps and why the position on the 150th meridian is so important, has many connections. Well, to begin with, it's 210 degrees back the other way, back to Greenwich, back to the prime meridian. That's 756,000 seconds. The diameter of the sun in Egyptian royal miles, 756,000 Egyptian royal miles. Back in the other way, back 150 degrees back to Greenwich, the prime meridian, 2.61798. So effectively 2.618, which is phi squared, phi plus 1. Fibonacci numbers is phi spiral, the nautilus shell, all these sunflowers, hurricanes, cyclones, typhoons, galaxies are all shaped on this particular point. Now, the pentagram and the pentagon are perfectly proportioned to the golden ratio as well, and that's important because if you draw, for instance, a pentagon, the angles defining the pentagon on the inside, 108 times 5 is 540. On the outside, 252 times 5 is 1,260. So 210 degrees is 12,600 minutes on the compass. Again, back the other way towards Greenwich, 150 degrees or 540,000, 540,000, and it's another reference. But the internal angle of a pentagon, this would also work on a pentagram, is 108 degrees. It's 108,000 seconds to the prime, to that 180th meridian, so exactly on the opposite side of the Greenwich meridian. The Great Pyramid, 756 feet at the base. Now I'm rounding that off slightly. Each length is slight variation in it, but effectively the average is 756 feet. The sun, 756,000 Egyptian royal miles. Now also the Great Pyramid itself, it is proportioned to the golden number, to phi, but also to phi squared as well. So by proportion, phi and phi squared, or phi minus 1, are built into the proportions of the pyramid. Well, that's again bringing us back to 150 degrees or 2.618 radian. Well, it doesn't quite end there, because now not only in proportion but also in meters. There's a hidden proportion where in the allegedly modern meter, phi squared pops up again. Why is that important? Well, a 1 meter pendulum creates a 1 second pendulum, and the arc of that is 1 Egyptian royal cubit or 5.236 radian. That's 30 degrees to the 180th meridian. Layer upon layer upon layer. I'll put the link in the description box to some videos in regards to the meter, the cubit, and the Great Pyramid, and how these connect. It's a lot of beautiful information in regards to this, and including some of my own findings. It just keeps building and building and building with each passing day. Marulan is the defining point, the perfect place for time, Eastern Australian Standard Time. It's the perfect place for the equinox. The distance from the Greenwich meridian, even Greenwich being a lovely point in regards to this, and the angle of it effectively reflecting the pyramid once again. So 6 a.m., 6 p.m, sunrise and sunset, the perfect point on the equinox. The Great Pyramid itself, it's an 8-sided pyramid, and it reveals itself on the equinox. Chichen Itza pyramid in Mexico, the serpent appears on the equinox, probably the oldest known observatory in the world. Wurdi Youang in southern Australia, marked with the equinox once more. So these positions, it's not just about individual sites. These things have been carefully laid out on an Earth scale. It's not just a temple, it's not just a city, it's not just a nation, it's done on a global scale. And again, so the second, the cubit, the meter, how they all link together, and references to time. Now, especially in regards to the Great Pyramid, this 1 second pendulum creating 86,400 seconds per day. Well, for one thing, the maximum visible base of the Great Pyramid defines the speed of the Earth per second. The maximum visible base, the height multiplied by 86,400 seconds gives us the polar diameter of the Earth. Again, the maximum visible base multiplied by 86,400 gives us the circumference of the Earth, the rotational speed of the Earth. The height multiplied by that same number gives us the polar diameter of the Earth. So it's describing the flattening of the Earth. But what's more is that pendulum at 30 degrees is 108,000 seconds. This concept of sun, earth and moon and time and measurement is very important. Now, for instance, in Meridian Park here, just to the side, is the sundial with a reference to Saturn on there. The polar diameter of Saturn is plus or minus, but if 108,000 kilometers is pretty much spot on. The speed of the Earth at its maximum speed is 108,000 kilometers per hour, a reference to time. So we had seconds. Also, the speed of the Earth per hour is defined by Saturn or Father Time, 108. So 108,000 multiplied by 100, you get the equatorial diameter of the Earth in the old long foot. Divide it by 100, you get the radius of the Earth in miles, radius of the moon in miles, 1080. Multiply the diameter of the Earth by 100 and you get the distance from the Earth to the moon. And this will be a double reference, the distance from the Earth to the moon. The equatorial circumference of the Earth. So if you're looking at it at day or night, remember the equinox as well divides a day into day or night. Well, that's 10,800 nautical miles. 108 times the diameter of the Earth is the diameter of the Sun. Again, above 99.9%. It depends on how you measure the Sun as well, because it's not a solid object. It's gas, and so there's always a little bit of leeway in these things. But 108 times the diameter of the Sun gives us a distance from the Sun to the Earth. 108 Sun, Earth, Moon ratios, connecting with time, connecting with measurement, with the pendulum, and the positioning of these important points. The Marulan marker, it's visually even, it's a reference to Sun, Earth and Moon. The position of it, the numbers of it, all connects. Now, of course, Australian Eastern Standard Time is defined at Marulan on the 150th meridian. It's the only town in the world on that exact position. And this was the largest stone transported in the Southern Hemisphere at that time, 30 tonne. That's 29.53 long tonnes, or alternatively, 33 short tonnes as well. So the exact weight of it, but I'm pretty sure that they were spot on with these things. They always are. 29.53 long tonnes, weights and measures. The synodic month, one rotation of the moon around the Earth in relation to the Sun, 29.53 days. That's where we get full moons, and eclipses will emerge from the same thing. But that doesn't end there, because if you multiply, so the moon, one orbit around the Earth in relation to the Sun, 29.53. Multiply the diameter of the Earth by 29.53, you get the distance from the Earth to the moon. Multiply the diameter of the moon by 108, you get the distance from the Earth to the moon. So these connect with one another. It's about this beautiful, beautiful harmonies, measurable, testable. I'm speechless when it comes to why I got kicked off an astronomy site for pointing this thing out. People posted lovely, pretty pictures from Hubble. Somehow that's acceptable. I point these things out and they don't want to hear it. They refuse to hear it. The equinoxes, Marulan, time, measurement, natural scales, harmonizing with man-made scales, harmonizing with modern architecture, with ancient architecture across the world, the Americas, Egypt, Indigenous Australians. That's at least 11,000 years old. Wurdi Youang. These things don't just in this supposedly randomness of which they try to promote and preach so much at these things would not happen. Now maybe, well, the equinox being an important marker in times of harvest and hunter-gatherer societies. So yes, that is possible, but the use of particular measurements, well, such as the Chichen Itza pyramid, the base of it is 180 feet. It's built on top of an older pyramid, 108 feet, the older pyramid underneath. 108, I've done lots of videos on these same measurements across the world, written in stone, written in the architecture. That is then reflected in modern architecture. So this archway, but for instance, I've done so many videos on so many sites on Catholic cathedrals, Protestant cathedrals, Buddhist temples. I've got to do them in the future, but also the major mosques of the world, ancient important secular buildings, especially Masonic temples, places like Washington, Canberra, Brasilia, Astana, all have exactly the same numbers repeating over and over again. This cannot be a coincidence. So anyway, with that, have a happy equinox. There's something here. Again, it's through weights and measures is the key to understanding these things. The ancients passed on weights and measures. The symbols of weights and measure have been put on. It's endless. It's geometry. It's astronomy. It's music. It's arithmetic. It's everywhere, and especially today on the equinox. Anyway, bid you adieu. Have a good one.
Noisy.